Hello, my friends. Welcome back to my channel. Look who we have on the stand today. It is Mr. Thorn. Now, I have no idea what tools I'm going to need to groom him, so we're pulling out a lot of tools for the moment. It is his first time on our stand, so my first time to really get a chance to lay hands on him. We're going to put this one in the Meet the Goats playlist because it is our first time grooming Thorn. And we're going to talk a little bit about Mr. Thorn today. Now, he's fairly easy to clean, or groom, I should say. He's fairly easy to brush because he has been cut down. Once he became a master champion, as a part of a larger herd, it's pretty standard operating procedure for the owner or breeder to just hack off their coat. Sometimes they even shave them completely, right? That requires less maintenance. You don't have to do what I do, which is get them up on the stand and groom them and really brush them out. And they don't necessarily need all that length of hair when they're done being a show goat. Now, I prefer to keep my guys intact in terms of in their coat, right? I tried cutting our old guy Flash once, and I was pretty unhappy after I did it. I have showed you before, that I will certainly cut a master champion's, if they have a big knot or they have a big mat, especially under their belly, I will cut them without hesitation because what's the point of torturing them, to brush out such a big mess if it's not necessary. But I try and leave the length of their coat intact. So Thorn joined our herd a few months ago after we unexpectedly lost Flash. I mean, now Flash was an old guy. We knew we were going to lose him, in the next probably 12 months. That was sort of expected, right? He had retired from breeding. He was definitely starting to show signs of age, and he was just an old guy. And he passed peacefully in his sleep, which is the best thing I can ask for. But he did it at a point in time where I had reduced my buck herd to just him and Phineas, and that created a problem because, Phineas can't live alone. Well, okay. He can live alone. He shouldn't, because that's just not how goats are happy. So, the next question became, what do we do? I didn't want to bring in a baby buck because ideally I'm trying to keep one of my bucks. And that was sort of the purpose of thinning the herd a bit, getting ready for what I hoped was going to be a breeding season this year that would gift me with a buck that I could keep to be a part of my breeding program. Phineas is 3 years old. He's going to be in my breeding program for quite some time yet. So that was the ideal state, right? Have a couple of younger bucks and have longevity in my breeding program. Your coat's actually really easy when you're this short. So that was, again, kind of the game plan, and it was thwarted with Flash's passing. So I talked to a couple of breeders out there that I respect their animals, and what I seriously asked for, and it was a big ask, right, is I wanted an older buck, not ancient by any means, but an older buck, a mature buck, let's put it, who had already been in the show ring, was a master champion, would provide the right genetics to my herd, but ultimately still give me the flexibility to add a baby to my herd from my own breeding lines, and give me kind of, I'll call it that spread of ages. And one of my wonderful breeder friends who I respect dearly happened to have this guy. And we talked about him. Is he perfect? No, no buck is perfect. But when you look and evaluate a buck, you want them to be the best they possibly can, which is why I wanted to make sure he was a master champion. But in addition to that, you have to look at what are his faults, right? What are the things that you would fix in him if you could, because those are what's going to get into your herd. And sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's a bad thing, right? You don't want to put faults into your herd if they are going to take the quality of your herd down. So, Phineas's faults are he's a little bit larger. He is, how do I want to phrase it? He's got personality faults, but he's a lot of fun, and I like that type of personality. From a conformation perspective, he's pretty darn perfect. His coat is, or was, stunning till he got mature and rubbed most of it off. So, he really is top notch, and that's why he master champion so quickly, and certainly why he's become central to my breeding program. Thorn has a conformational fault. It is not a big deal. It is not something that I am concerned about, but I want to talk to you about it because, just like with everything, I try and be as fully transparent as possible. So Thorn's fault is he's what they call weak in the hind end, right? He's a little bit narrow back here. He's a little bit weak in his hocks, meaning that he sits kind of back on them a bit. It doesn't hurt him. It's not something that's detrimental. And unless you're a breeder and you're looking for it, you're probably not going to even notice it, right? It's not extreme by any means. It's just not ideal. Now, interestingly enough, my herd, because I focus so much on conformation and so strongly on conformation, my girls are what they call strong in the back end, almost to a fault. Some of the judges actually complain that my girls are not quite as feminine as they should be. They're not quite as, elegant looking because they're so strong in their back end. They're almost masculine. And I did that I did that on purpose because, again, my ideal goat is a goat that can breed naturally, that can have babies naturally, that has the space in the room for having babies naturally. But is there opportunity to temper that a bit? There is. And if there's any fault that I consistently hear from my judges, or the judges, is that one on my does. So weirdly enough, Mr. Thorn's fault actually helps me because his weaker back end will temper my doe's strong back end that is leaning toward not ideal for them based on show stance and quality. So it's a win-win, right? His breeder, or his owner actually was not his breeder, had the opportunity to use Thorn in her herd as she saw fit, and then had an opportunity to pass him to me, where he will actually improve the quality of my herd despite not being 100% perfect. I hope that makes sense. I hope that you guys kind of get the gist of what I'm saying here. Is sometimes, you don't want the most perfect buck when you're working on improving your herd quality. You're looking at what you need. So that was, again, kind of oddly enough, a perfect match for my herd. And then a couple of other things that just happened to be, I'll call it fate, the world, coincidence, whatever. Thorn is a Flying J line. He was bred by Flying J, and Flash was a Flying J goat. So kismet, right? Like, was this just meant to be? It just happened to be that this guy was starting to be not useful in his herd anymore, and also that he had the right conformation to work on my herd quality. And he had, he happens to have a match with Flash's breeding and genetics. And, you know, like that goat lived a long, long, healthy life. So, you know, the hope and the expectation would be that that carries on with Thorn, right? And if that's the case, then Thorn will breed well into his, you know, 10-year-old self, 11-year-old self. We retired Flash at 10, but I think he probably could have kept going. It was just time for him to retire because I had a couple of younger bucks that I wanted to use. So yeah, really interesting how that worked out. Oop, did I miss a spot? I sure did. And so that's how Thorn sort of came to be in my herd. There was a bit of a need for a buck, so a scramble and a search, and then he just fit the bill perfectly. So a 10-hour round trip drive later, and he was home. He's had time to settle in with Phineas. The other thing that's interesting with Thorn is he is a super heavy fainter. That means he hardly moves, right? He is a goat that knows he faints. He knows that he's going to stiffen up and fall over if he moves too fast. So he doesn't do much running, much headbutting, much playing. He's a guy who knows what he's got. I don't focus on heavy faint in my herd. I want them to retain the fainting trait because that is, to me, important. It's a part of their history. It's a part of their breed. It's a part of who they are. But I'm not looking to make goats that fall over at the, you know, drop of a hat. However, over the years, especially since my girls are so comfortable with me, as you guys well know, their fainting and even their babies fainting, we socialize them so well, has reduced to a pretty small amount, right? Like I'd almost put them at a 1 on the fainting scale of 1.5, whereas Mr. Thorn here would be a 5. So again, kind of on purpose to the benefit of my herd, he will bring a little bit more of that fainting into the herd. And again, ideally what will happen is the babies will sort of get a blend of him and the doe. So a 1 and a 5, they'll end up at a 3, which for me is ideal. A 3 on the fainting scale means that they stiffen up. Sometimes they fall over, but they don't faint all the time. They don't faint, you know, in serious form like he does. I mean, when he faints, he's down for the count for a while. And he faints a lot and he stiffens up a lot, you know, like everything is slow moving with him because of it. So yeah, I think, you know, overall, he's the perfect goat for my herd. He would not be the perfect goat for another herd. And I'm just excited to have him. I'm excited that I was able to lay hands on him. He's a little bit dirty, but it's breeding season, and that's what I expect. That's why his breeder or his owner cut his coat, right? You can see even here with these little short, tiny hairs, he's filthy dirty because he's peeing on himself to get ready for the girls, because that's how they make themselves sexy. It's just lovely. And, you know, if you don't have the ability or the time to put all of your goats on a stand on a regular basis and get them groomed, this type of cut makes sense because then they're not walking around with heavy, wet fur or heavy, wet hair, technically, that is just getting matted and dirty and stinky and gross. Now, he's stinky, trust me, but he's not as bad as he could be. And he's about done. He's an easy groom. His hooves are a disaster. I worked on them for a good 10 minutes before I started grooming him. And he's got some eye boogies that we worked on before I started filming because nobody wants to see me sit there with my fingernails and pick crusties off his face. But otherwise, he's in pretty good shape. And I'm excited to add him to the breeding program. And I think he's going to do a lot to continue my journey to perfect the herd. I hope you are having a fabulous day wherever you are in this world. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, be kind, and I will see you at the next one. Bye for now.